Today we're going to talk about, before you eat breakfast, the truth about oatmeal, eggs, bacon, and dairy after the age of 50. Now, I'm willing to bet that every one of you watching has eaten at least one of these foods for breakfast in the last week. Whether it was yesterday, whether it was last Sunday, whether it was this morning, you're going to relate to this. And the reason I'm bringing this up specifically for the over 50 crowd is because everything I learned about breakfast growing up has been completely turned upside down by what we now know about aging metabolism and how breakfast foods actually behave inside an older body. When I was a kid, my mom used to make instant oatmeal every single morning. It came in that little packet you tore open, poured into a bowl, added hot water, and within seconds it was ready. We would splash a little milk in it, stir it up, and the family ate it in about 5 minutes and ran off to school. And I honestly thought breakfast was the healthiest meal of the day until I went to medical school and started reading the research, and then things I thought I knew just began falling apart. Because back then, egg yolks were being called heart attacks on a plate. Bacon was treated as the weekend villain. Milk was being marketed as the reason your bones would never break. And cereal boxes were promising us longer lives if we just ate the right flake. Well, the science has finally caught up to what actually happens inside a 50-plus body when you eat these foods. So let's walk through the entire breakfast question together: oatmeal, eggs, bacon, dairy. But before we get into the food itself, let's actually talk about breakfast, because the word itself changes the answer. Breakfast is 2 words put together: breaking your fast. That's it. Breakfast is the breaking of an overnight fast. So when you wake up in the morning, you have technically been fasting for 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 hours, depending on when you had dinner the night before, and your body has been doing some pretty remarkable things during that fast. Before we go any further, I want to point out that fasting is the most natural thing in the world, and it has been with us for as long as humans have been around. We are naturally intermittent fasters, because every night when we go to sleep, we stop eating, and our body switches into a different metabolic gear. Now think about your body like a car at a gas station. When you actually pull up to the pump, you turn the engine off, because you do not want the engine burning fuel while you are pumping it in right. And so your body does exactly the same thing. When you eat during the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, your metabolism is in what I like to call fuel storage mode. Your insulin rises, your glucose rises, and your body is taking that energy and putting it away in storage for later. It is not in fat burning mode, it is in fat storing mode. Now the moment you finish dinner and you put the dishes away and you do not eat anything else for the rest of the night, your insulin starts to come down, your glucose starts to come down, and after a while your body senses this and it switches gears like a Ferrari from fuel storage mode into fat burning mode. So now your body is tapping into its stored energy. It is actually burning down the excess fuel you put on during the day. And this is exactly why we lose weight during sleep. And this is exactly why the hours between dinner and breakfast are the most powerful hours of your day for metabolic health, especially after 50. When visceral fat has begun to creep in and insulin sensitivity has begun to quietly drop. So let's actually do the math together. Let's say you ate dinner at 7 and you finished at 8. You put the dishes away. Your insulin starts to drop. Your body switches into burning mode. 3 hours later, you go to bed at 11. And let's say you sleep 8 hours, which research suggests is the sweet spot for most adults. And then you wake up at 7 in the morning. That is 3 hours before bed. Plus 8 hours of sleeping equals 11 hours of your body being in fat burning mode, burning down stored fuel, improving blood sugar, improving cholesterol, all while you slept for free. Now here is the catch, and here is where everything changes if you wake up in the morning and you do what moms have always told you to do, which is rush to the kitchen and eat breakfast the moment your feet hit the floor. You cut that fat burning window short, you raise your insulin, you switch back into storage mode, and you lose those precious fasting hours. But if instead you take your time, you get up, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you go for a short walk, you check your email, you give yourself 1 full hour before you eat. You just took 11 hours of fasting and extended it to 12. And 12 hours means half your entire day, your body is in fat burning mode. That is a 50% dividend in metabolic health just by waiting 1 hour in the morning. So before we even get to the food, the first step before breakfast is to extend your overnight fast by at least an hour when you are over 50. This is one of the simplest and most powerful metabolism tools I can give you, and most doctors are not telling you this. So let's talk about oatmeal, because oatmeal is the food I get asked about the most, and there's a fancy version and there's a junky version, and you want to know the difference, because after 50, your gut and your cardiovascular system and your blood sugar really care about which one you pick. Now, oats are a whole grain, and they contain two powerful natural bioactives that researchers have been studying for years. The first is called avenantramide. I am going to spell it out so you have it, a venantramide. That is a long, complicated word, but it is worth knowing, because avenantramide is a unique polyphenol found mostly in oats, and it is strongly anti-inflammatory, which is a fancy way of saying it calms down the silent chronic inflammation inside your body. And we know that low-grade inflammation is one of the root drivers of heart disease, cognitive decline, joint pain, and even certain cancers. As we get older, the second bioactive is called beta-D-glucan, beta as in David the 500th, as in dog, glucan, Glucan, and beta-D-glucan is a soluble fiber that has been studied in clinical trials and shown to do two really important things for people over 50. Number one, it lowers LDL cholesterol, that is the bad cholesterol, the kind that sticks to your artery walls and over time can lead to heart attacks and strokes. And number two, it feeds your gut microbiome. Now your gut microbiome after 50 starts to lose some of its diversity, and that loss has been linked in clinical research to weaker immune function, slower metabolism, and even mood changes. So beta-D-glucan essentially becomes food for your good gut bacteria, and the same bacteria that influence your brain. Through what scientists call the gut-brain axis, now researchers have also looked at what happens when these compounds are studied together, and the findings have been remarkable in wound healing models. Oats have been shown to support new blood vessel growth and to recruit stem cells, which are your body's repair crew. So we are not just talking about comfort breakfast food, we are talking about real medicine packed inside a humble bowl of oats. But here is the catch, and this matters after 50. Not all oatmeal is created equal. There are three types on the grocery shelf. The first is steel-cut oats, and these are the absolute best for the over 50 crowd because they are the least processed. They are simply whole oat kernels, toasted and chopped with a steel blade. That's it. They take about 30 to 40 minutes on the stove, but you can prep them the night before and reheat in the morning. With a splash of water on the stove, please do not microwave them because microwaving starchy foods can create unwanted chemical byproducts. Second, you have rolled oats, and these are the ones that have been steamed and then flattened like a small pizza dough and dried out. This is a moderate amount of processing, and they cook in about 5 to 10 minutes. And finally, you have instant oatmeal, and this is the one I grew up with, and this is the one I never feed my family today because instant oatmeal is ultra processed. The oats are pre-cooked, rolled into tiny flakes, and then the packets are loaded with added sugar, added artificial flavoring, added preservatives, and added coloring, and sometimes microplastics from the packaging can shed into the food. So if you are eating oatmeal after 50, you want the steel-cut version or at minimum the rolled oats version, and you always want to read the ingredients list. Now, how do I prep a great bowl? I boil water on the stove, add steel-cut oats, add a tiny pinch of salt, not a lot, just a pinch, because a pinch brings out the natural savory flavor of the oats. Lower the heat and simmer for 30 minutes, let it cool. Pour it into a glass container, not plastic, because plastic can leach into warm food, and refrigerate overnight in the morning. I reheat it with a splash of water on the stove and add my toppings, and toppings are where this gets magical. Add berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. They are loaded with antioxidants called anthocyanins, which researchers have shown are anti-inflammatory and even support your stem cells. Add a small handful of crushed nuts, pistachios, walnuts, almonds. They give you healthy fats and a bit of plant protein, and for sweetness, add cut, fresh, seasonal fruit or just a tiny drizzle of pure maple syrup. Never add table sugar and never add artificial sweeteners. So oatmeal after 50, thumbs up, but you want steel-cut oats and real toppings, and you want to avoid the instant processed packets. Now let's talk about eggs, because eggs have been at the center of one of the biggest food myths of the last 50 years, and it is finally time to put that myth to bed. The myth was that eggs are bad for your heart and that eggs raise your cholesterol. That myth started in the 1970s, and it was based on studies that were honestly not very well designed, and doctors at the time did not know that there are two kinds of cholesterol, the bad LDL cholesterol and the good HDL cholesterol. And they also failed to separate out what people were eating alongside the eggs, because most of the people in those studies were eating eggs with bacon and sausage and butter and cream and coffee and all of the other fatty things, not just the eggs. So they pinned the tail on the egg, and the egg took the blame unfairly now. Modern research has completely reversed that verdict. Clinical studies have shown that for most people, eating eggs does not raise LDL cholesterol, and in some people, eggs actually raise HDL cholesterol, which is the protective one. And here is another reason eggs are absolutely fantastic after 50. Eggs are loaded with two specific bioactives that protect your eyes as you age: lutein, spelled Lutein, and zeaxanthin, spelled Zeaxanthin. These two compounds protect the back of your eye, the retina, from a condition called age-related macular degeneration, which is the most common cause of irreversible vision loss in people over 60. Now, your retina is essentially a thin layer of nerve tissue at the back of your eye, and underneath that layer are tiny blood vessels that feed those nerves in wet macular degeneration. Those tiny blood vessels become leaky, they bleed, and cause swelling right under the retinal nerves, and that swelling destroys your central vision. So imagine I am holding up my fist in front of your face. If macular degeneration takes hold, you would see my fist as just a dark, blurry blob in the center. You could still see the edges of the room, but the center would be gone. This is one of the most feared diagnoses for any person over 60, and here is the remarkable part. Clinical studies have shown that eating eggs measurably raises your blood levels of lutein and zeaxanthin, and that those raised levels are directly linked to a lower long-term risk of macular degeneration. Researchers, following participants over many years, have found that moderate regular egg consumption was associated with a measurably lower risk of late-stage macular degeneration. So eggs are not just breakfast protein, they are eye medicine in a shell. Eggs also contain choline, which your brain uses to send messages between nerve cells, and eggs contain vitamin A, which protects the surface of your eye and your immune system and your skin too. Now, how should you actually eat eggs after 50? I would recommend about 5 eggs per week, not necessarily every day, but consistently. And when you can find pasture-raised eggs from a local farm or a friend who keeps chickens, those eggs have been shown in research to have higher levels of lutein and zeaxanthin and higher omega-3 content, which helps lower triglycerides and reduce inflammation in your blood vessels. And when it comes to cooking, skip the butter, skip the bacon grease, cook your eggs in extra virgin olive oil, because the polyphenols in the olive oil add another layer of health benefit. Or just boil them. Hard-boiled eggs are perfect. After 50, they are portable, they are protein-packed and ready to go. And here is a small culinary tip. Peel a hard-boiled egg, bite off the top, add a tiny drop of low-sodium soy sauce into the yolk. The umami from the soy sauce transforms a simple boiled egg into something genuinely restaurant quality. So eggs after 50, thumbs up. Keep them in moderation, about 5 per week, and choose pasture-raised when you can. Now let's talk about bacon, because this is the part of the conversation nobody wants to hear. And I am going to be honest with you, bacon is not a health food. And after 50, it is even less of a health food. Bacon is salt-cured pork, and that means it is loaded with two things that are particularly dangerous as you age: saturated fat and sodium. 3 slices of bacon contain roughly 5 grams of saturated fat, which is around half of the daily limit recommended by the American Heart Association, and they also contain a huge amount of sodium, which is the direct driver of high blood pressure, hypertension. Now, why is hypertension especially dangerous after 50? Because your blood vessels are already losing some of their elasticity. They are already a little stiffer than they were at 30. So adding a lot of salt on top of that stiffens them further and drives up your blood pressure. And high blood pressure is the silent killer, because most people cannot feel it. It is just slowly grinding away at the lining of your arteries day after day, and one day that grinding can lead to a stroke or a heart attack. So bacon's sodium load is a real concern after 50. But there is another concern with bacon, and that is that bacon is a processed meat, and the World Health Organization classifies processed meats as a Group 1 carcinogen that puts them in the same formal category as tobacco and asbestos. I am not telling you bacon is as dangerous as smoking. I am telling you that the science has shown that that regular consumption of processed meats measurably increases your risk of certain cancers, particularly colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, and stomach cancer. Major analyses covering hundreds of thousands of people have found that for roughly every 50 grams of processed meat consumed per day, the risk of colorectal cancer goes up measurably, and 50 grams is about 2 slices of bacon. So the math is not in bacon's favor. And there is also the issue of what happens when you actually cook bacon. When you fry bacon at high heat, it generates compounds called heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and advanced glycation end products. All 3 of those have been shown in laboratory studies to trigger damage, and the darker you cook the bacon, the more of those compounds you generate. So the classic American-style crispy blackened bacon is actually the worst version. And that dark, crusty edge that everyone loves is exactly where those harmful compounds are most concentrated. But here is the honesty part 1. I'm not going to tell you to never eat bacon because I am a reasonable doctor and I understand there are pleasures in life, and a slice or 2 of bacon on a Sunday brunch with your family is not going to ruin your life if the rest of your diet is built on whole plant foods and lean proteins. What I want you to do is approach bacon with eyes wide open. You know what it does to your blood vessels. You know what it does to your cancer risk. And if you are going to eat it, make a few small changes. Cook it lighter in color, do not blacken it. And if you can add a thin layer of extra virgin olive oil to the pan before frying, because the polyphenols in olive oil partially neutralize some of the harmful compounds that form during the cooking process. And the rest of your day should be filled with vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, because those foods are the ones that actually raise your body's natural defenses and counterbalance some of the damage from occasional processed meat. So bacon after 50, thumbs down. But if you absolutely have to enjoy it, occasionally do it lighter in color and balance it with a week of plant-rich meals. Now let's talk about dairy, because this is where it gets interesting and where the science actually has some surprises. Now, milk has always been sold to us as the bone protector. Got milk, strong bones. That was the entire marketing campaign for decades, and there is real truth to it. Milk contains calcium and it is fortified with vitamin D, and both of those are essential for bone density, especially after 50, when women in particular are losing bone mass quickly during and after menopause, and that bone loss leads to osteoporosis and a much higher risk of hip fractures and spine fractures. So milk is not a villain. It is genuinely useful for bone health, especially when paired with regular weight bearing. Exercise like walking and gentle resistance training milk is also a great source of high-quality protein, and that matters enormously after 50 because starting in your 40s, your body begins losing muscle mass every year in a process called sarcopenia, that is spelled sarcopenia. And if you do not feed your muscles enough protein, they waste away. And that loss of muscle is connected to frailty falls and loss of independence as you get older, and clinical research has shown that consuming roughly 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein per meal maximally stimulates muscle protein synthesis. So if you are having a cup of milk at breakfast and you are also having eggs and some oats, you are stacking your protein, you are feeding your muscles and protecting yourself against sarcopenia. So milk after 50 can be a real friend if you tolerate it well. However, there is one important place I would recommend you do not put your milk, and that is in your coffee. And the reason is fascinating. Now, coffee is one of the most powerful health drinks on the planet. It contains a bioactive called chlorogenic acid, and chlorogenic acid has been shown in clinical studies to support gut health, lower inflammation, and even interfere with the blood supply, feeding abnormal cells. So coffee is really a grand slammer for your health defenses. But when you add milk or cream to coffee, the milk fat forms tiny soap bubble structures called micelles, spelled M-I-C-E-L-L-E-S. And those micelles trap the chlorogenic acid inside the bubbles and physically prevent your gut from absorbing those bioactives. Research has shown that when people consumed coffee with milk at the same time, the bioavailability of chlorogenic acid was significantly reduced compared to drinking the coffee. Black. So if you want the full health benefit of your morning coffee, drink it black. Or if you really need to soften the acidity, use soy milk, almond milk, oat milk, or even cashew milk. Those plant milks do not form the same micelle structures and they don't interfere with chlorogenic acid absorption, so milk after 50, thumbs up in moderation. Just keep it out of your coffee. Now, what about cheese? This is where I have some surprising news because cheese has long been treated as the villain of the dairy world. It is high in saturated fat. It is high in sodium and it is calorie dense. But what most people don't know is that cheese is actually a fermented food. And during fermentation, cheese develops its own microbiome of healthy bacteria. When you eat those bacteria, they contribute to your own gut microbiome. Research has shown that cheese eaters who consume modest amounts of cheese, roughly the equivalent of a slice or two per day, do not appear to have an increased rate of heart disease, compared to people who avoid cheese, and the protein and calcium in cheese genuinely support bone density, which matters even more after 50. So cheese after 50, thumbs up in moderation and as a special treat, not an everyday habit. Now finally, let's talk about yogurt, because yogurt is the dairy food I am most enthusiastic about for people over 50. Yogurt is fermented, it is loaded with probiotics, lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, and other beneficial strains, and what they do when they reach your gut is they crowd out the bad bacteria. They strengthen your gut lining, and they produce short-chain fatty acids that calm inflammation in your entire body. So when your gut is healthy, your brain is healthier, your immune system is stronger, your mood is better, and even your metabolism works more efficiently. Observational research has consistently shown that people who regularly eat yogurt have measurably better cardiovascular health outcomes compared to people who skip yogurt. So I am firmly on team yogurt for the over 50 crowd. However, I want you to be very careful about which yogurt you actually buy, and this is where most people make the wrong choice. Most people reach for the low-fat yogurt because they think it is the healthier option, and I am here to tell you that for yogurt specifically, that is the wrong instinct, and here is why. When manufacturers take the fat out of yogurt to make it low fat, it collapses the texture, it becomes thin and watery, so they have to add emulsifiers, thickeners, stabilizers to bring back the mouthfeel, and they often add sugar to bring back the flavor. Now, research published by scientific teams, including researchers at the University of Paris and Georgia State University, has shown that the emulsifiers commonly used in low-fat yogurt like polysorbate 80-carboxymethyl cellulose and carrageenan can actually damage the gut microbiome. They alter the balance of bacteria in your colon, and they can trigger low-grade inflammation, which is exactly the opposite of what you want from a probiotic food. So what should you do? Buy whole-fat, plain yogurt. Greek yogurt is ideal. Add your own toppings at home. Add fresh berries. Add chopped walnuts or pistachios. Add pumpkin seeds. Add cut kiwi or mango. And if you want a touch of sweetness, drizzle a tiny bit of pure honey or pure maple syrup. And clinical research has shown that honey contains bioactive antioxidants, and a study from the University of Illinois found that honey consumption measurably increased antioxidant levels in the bloodstream. So the combination of whole yogurt plus fresh fruit plus nuts plus a touch of honey is honestly one of the single best breakfasts you can build for someone over 50. Now let me bring it all together before I let you go. So what is the verdict? Oatmeal after 50, thumbs up, but choose steel cut or rolled oats, not the instant packets, and load them with berries and nuts. Eggs after 50, thumbs up, about 5 per week, and choose pasture raised when you can. Bacon after 50, thumbs down. It tastes good, but it is loaded with saturated fat, loaded with sodium, and classified by the World Health Organization as a group 1 carcinogen, and the darker you fry it, the worse it is. So keep it occasional, light in color, and balance it with a week of plant-rich meals. Dairy after 50, thumbs up in moderation. Whole milk can be a friend. Cheese in small amounts. Yes, yogurt, absolutely yes, but it must be whole-fat plain yogurt with no emulsifiers, no thickeners, and no added sugar, and please add your own toppings at home. That is the truth about breakfast after 50, and the truth is the choices you make in those first 15 minutes of your day set the metabolic tone for everything that follows. So choose food as medicine, choose real whole food, and your body will reward you for decades to come. Thanks for being here today. I'll see you in the next one.